All right, so imagine like your favorite online game, but it's lag-free, even with millions of players all battling it out, in real time. Or like a game world so big, it feels like it's constantly, growing and evolving right before your eyes.
It really is amazing how much we rely on those seamless digital experiences, especially when it comes to gaming, right? And like
Yeah.
behind the scenes,
Yeah.
it's often the database that's just working overtime to make all of that happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And so today, we are going to take a deep dive into TiDB.
Uh,
Um, it's a database that's causing a lot of buzz, especially in the gaming world.
yeah, and what I'm seeing in this presentation, TiDB is not like your typical database. It's open source, which
Yeah.
is super cool because it means there's like this whole community of developers
Right.
constantly, working on it and improving it. And it's what they call a distributed SQL database, or sometimes they call it NewSQL. I gotta be honest, those terms sound kind of intimidating to me.
Yeah, those are some pretty technical terms. Let's break that down a little.
Okay, yeah.
So you see, TiDB actually takes a lot of inspiration from Google Spanner. Google Spanner is like this super sophisticated, globally distributed database. It basically powers a lot of Google's services.
Okay, so you're saying Spanner is like the gold standard.
You can think of it that way, like the
Right.
gold standard for, handling massive amounts of data
Mm-hmm.
across like multiple locations and still maintaining consistency and speed.
That's incredible.
It is.
So Google Spanner is like the rock star, and then
Yeah.
TiDB is like making those rock star features more accessible.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not all just hype either. TiDB is backed by some serious players
Mm.
like Sequoia Capital and GGV Capital.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and plus it's already got some important security certifications
Yeah.
like ISO 27001 and GDPR.
Okay, and for people who maybe aren't familiar with those, what do those mean exactly?
Those basically mean that they're serious about data security.
Yeah.
And keeping everything safe.
That's good, especially when we're talking about like games that have virtual currencies
Absolutely.
or like in-game purchases and stuff. It's crucial.
Yeah, you don't want your, hard-earned loot to just disappear
Yeah,
because of some database issue.
exactly. Yeah.
So we talked about the investors,
Mhm.
some big names there, but TiDB is also being used by companies that pretty much everyone has heard of, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're talking about companies like Airbnb and Visa. But one example that really stands out to me is Databricks. They're a leader in data and AI.
Okay, yeah, Databricks is huge. What are they using TiDB for?
Well, they're actually using it to manage the metadata for their entire cloud infrastructure. And we're not just talking about like a small amount of data here. This is over 300 clusters.
300 clusters.
Yeah, so like a massive network of computers all working together.
Okay, wow. So if Databricks trusts TiDB with that much data,
Mm-hmm.
that's a pretty strong vote of confidence.
I think so, definitely.
And it seems like it's not just Databricks who's recognizing,
Yeah.
TiDB's potential. I mean, they were ranked #1 in Gartner's 2023 DBMS Global Market Report.
That's right.
And they even came in second place in the 2024 DB Tech Showcase in Japan. Yeah, they're making some serious waves.
Definitely. So one of the things that's interesting about TiDB is that it comes in a few different, I guess, you could say flavors.
Yeah, like different options to suit different needs.
Okay, so like different levels of difficulty in a video game.
I like that analogy. So you've got TiDB Enterprise, which is for,
Mm-hmm.
the big companies who need a super robust and fully supported solution.
Okay.
And then there's TiDB Cloud Dedicated, which is all about high availability.
Yeah.
And, it's designed to stay up and running, even if there are, like, hiccups in the system.
So that's for like mission critical applications where like downtime is just not an option.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And then for maybe smaller projects or, like, people who are just, getting started, trying to get their feet wet with TiDB. There's TiDB Cloud Serverless,
Mm-hmm.
which is super user-friendly.
At the easy mode.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to worry about setting up servers or any of that.
Nice.
Like, it's all handled for you.
And then, of course, they've got TiDB Community for like all the open source folks who want to, contribute to the project and all that.
Exactly. So there's really an option for everyone.
Yeah.
From individual developers
Yeah.
all the way up to large corporations.
That's really cool. So let's get to kind of the heart of why we're here.
Yeah.
What makes TiDB such a game changer specifically for the gaming industry?
Well, there are a lot of technical reasons, but it really boils down to this. TiDB is designed to handle the crazy demands of time, like modern online games. These are games with millions of players, complex in-game economies, and just this constant stream of real-time interactions.
Yeah, it's definitely not your grandma's Tetris anymore.
Right, exactly.
So what are some real-world examples, then, of how TiDB is being used in games today?
Well, one great example is this gaming sauce provider. They basically provide back-end services for other game developers, and they saw some explosive growth using TiDB.
Okay, how explosive are we talking here?
Well, we're talking about 100 times growth in just 12 months.
Whoa, 100 times.
Yeah.
Okay, so what were they doing with TiDB that allowed them to, achieve that kind of growth?
They were using TiDB to manage their game record services. So basically, all the data about player actions, progress, in-game items, all of that.
Wow, okay.
You can imagine when you're tracking all that data for a game with like millions of players,
Yeah.
it's a lot of data.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So TiDB is able to just, handle that kind of data deluge.
Not only handle it, but handle it really efficiently. I mean, they were able to achieve 99th percentile query response times under 140 milliseconds for even complex queries. And they're dealing with 150 terabytes of data and 300,000 data inserts per second.
Okay, so break that down for me. What does that mean in plain English?
It basically means that
Yeah.
even with all that data, TiDB can retrieve information super quickly, which translates to smooth, lag-free gameplay for the players.
So no more rage quitting because the game's lagging.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, that's a win for everyone. So are there other examples of how TiDB is being used in games?
Yeah, there are a lot of other cool examples. Like there's this gaming company that used TiDB to build a really efficient wallet service.
Okay.
And this wallet service manages billions of transactions for virtual currency.
Yeah.
And in-game items,
Billions of transactions.
Billions, yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
And, this is where a key feature of TiDB really comes into play. It's called ACD compliance. It's a bit technical, but
Yeah.
it basically ensures that every transaction is processed reliably and accurately.
So that means no money disappearing
Exactly.
or items getting duplicated.
Right. It keeps everything fair and consistent.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. So imagine a player buys a rare in-game item.
Yeah.
ACD compliance is going to make sure that that transaction is recorded correctly. So you don't have any, duplicates or missing items.
Makes sense. And speaking of reliability, remember that Databricks example we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
I mean, they were able to achieve 99.99% availability for their platform using TiDB.
Yeah. Which is incredible. It's a testament to how resilient TiDB is.
Yeah, that's basically saying their system is almost always up and running.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen how TiDB is being used, but what makes it so well suited for the specific demands of gaming? The presentation mentions this thing called a hybrid architecture, which seems like a big deal.
Yeah, so let's break that down a little bit. Traditional databases were typically designed for either transactional tasks like processing payments or updating stats or analytical tasks like understanding player behavior or, identifying trends. And you'd often need separate databases for each of those.
Okay, so it's like having two separate departments that need to constantly communicate.
Yeah, great analogy, which can slow things down.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's unique about TiDB is that it can handle both of those things within the same system.
Right. Okay.
So that's what we mean by hybrid architecture.
So it's like a multi-tool.
Yeah.
That can do all sorts of different things without needing to switch tools.
Right.
Okay, how does that benefit game developers then?
Well, it simplifies things a lot. Developers can access both the real-time game data and the analytical insights, all within the same database.
Okay.
So that leads to, faster development cycles and more efficient game operations.
So they can make changes, on the fly.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's super cool. But games aren't just about processing data quickly, right? They're also about fairness and consistency, which is why we talked about AC compliance earlier. So are there other ways that TiDB ensures data integrity in gaming?
Definitely, yeah. So let's talk about horizontal scalability, which is TiDB's ability to basically effortlessly expand its capacity as needed. So, imagine a new game launches.
Yeah.
And it suddenly becomes super popular.
It goes from a small indie game to the next Fortnite overnight.
Exactly, yeah.
What happens to the database then?
Well, with traditional databases, you might run into some issues, like performance problems, maybe even crashes, as the system struggles to keep up with all the new players.
Oh, wow, okay.
But TiDB's distributed architecture allows it to scale horizontally. by adding more nodes to the cluster.
So it's like adding more lanes to a highway. As traffic increases, TiDB can just expand to keep things moving smoothly.
Exactly, yeah. No bottlenecks, no crashes.
Okay, so TiDB can handle tons of data. It's reliable, and it can scale on demand. But what about the need for real-time data processing in games? Things like leaderboards that update instantly, in-game events that react to players, even like systems that detect cheating.
Right. So this is another area where TiDB really shines. Its architecture is designed for
Yeah.
high-speed data ingestion and processing, making it perfect for those real-time features.
Okay, so last question before we move on. We've all been there, right? You're playing a game, and then suddenly it goes offline for maintenance or updates or whatever. It's like the worst.
It can be super frustrating, yeah.
So how does TiDB handle those kinds of situations?
So this is where another one of TiDB's superpowers comes into play. It's called Online DDL, which stands for Online Data Definition Language.
Online DDL. Okay. What does that mean for, like, a regular gamer, though?
It basically means that developers can make changes to the database structure, like adding new items or features, without taking the whole game offline.
Whoa, wait. So you're telling me I could be, like, in the middle of a raid, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a new legendary sword available in the shop, and the game didn't even have to, like, restart or anything.
That's the idea, yeah. Those updates can happen behind the scenes, so players can keep playing without any interruption.
That's awesome.
It's a win-win.
So we've covered a lot here. We've looked at, what makes TiDB unique, how it's actually being used in the gaming world, and why it's so well suited for the demands of, like,
Right.
modern online games. Now I'm curious, though, how does it actually stack up against some of the, like, more established databases out there? Especially, like, MySQL. I know a lot of people are familiar with MySQL.
That's a great question. And I think
Yeah.
the presentation we're looking at actually provides some really interesting comparisons there. Yeah, it's really important to compare these things because it helps us understand, the strengths and weaknesses of the different technologies and the material we're looking at. Does a good job of, highlighting those differences, especially for things that are super relevant to gaming.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with write performance. Why is write performance so important for games?
Okay, so think about it this way. Every time a player does something in a game, like logs in, moves their character, interacts with something, buys something, battles an enemy, all those actions generate data, and that data has to be written to the database.
Right. Okay.
So if the database is slow at writing data, it's going to affect the gameplay.
Yeah, for sure. Players are going to experience lag and delays and all.
Exactly. It's not a good experience.
Right.
And that's where TiDB's distributed architecture really gives it an edge over something like MySQL.
Okay, remind me, how does that architecture help again?
Remember that highway analogy we talked about?
Yeah.
So TiDB is like a multi-lane highway.
Yeah.
That can handle a ton of traffic,
Yeah.
all coming in at the same time. MySQL is more like
A single lane road.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Where things can get backed up quickly.
Makes sense. So TiDB basically spreads those write operations out?
Exactly, yeah. It
Yeah.
spreads them across multiple nodes,
Okay.
and that ensures that, the data processing is smooth and efficient.
And MySQL, on the other hand?
It usually relies on a single master node for writes, which can become a bottleneck when you have a lot of data coming in.
So for write performance, TiDB is the clear winner.
Especially for games, yeah.
Okay, now what about horizontal scalability? We talked about how important that is for games.
Yeah, it's crucial.
So does MySQL offer that same kind of flexibility as TiDB?
It does to some extent,
Yeah.
but not quite as seamlessly.
Okay.
TiDB, remember, can just add more nodes to the cluster as needed. So it can easily handle those sudden spikes in player activity.
Or like if the game just suddenly explodes in popularity.
Exactly.
With
yeah.
MySQL. It's a bit trickier.
It's more like trying to widen a road
Yeah.
while cars are still driving on it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It often requires more complex strategies, like sharding, which involves splitting the database into multiple pieces and distributing them across different servers.
Okay, that sounds complicated.
It can be, yeah. It can be effective, but it definitely adds complexity.
So point goes to TiDB for scalability as well.
I think so.
Okay, let's talk about real-time data processing, which we know is super important for games, for things like leaderboards, in-game events.
Yeah, and fraud detection even.
Right, all those things. So how do TiDB and MySQL compare in that area?
Traditionally with MySQL, you would often need to use a completely separate system for handling those analytical tasks. Something like ClickHouse, for example, which means you have to extract data from MySQL, transform it, and then load it into this other system.
So like two separate departments again.
Exactly. That need to talk to each other.
And that introduces latency and complexity.
Right. Not good for games.
Yeah, games need to be fast.
For sure.
But TiDB, remember, has that hybrid architecture.
Oh, right, right.
So it can handle both real-time processing and analytical processing.
Yeah.
All in the same system.
That's pretty amazing.
It simplifies things a lot.
So it's like one brain that can handle all types of data.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
It reduces latency.
Yeah.
It makes it so much easier to create those real-time features.
Okay, and then the last key difference we talked about earlier was online DDL. The ability to make changes to the database without taking the game offline. We know TiDB is great at that.
Yeah.
So how does MySQL handle those kinds of updates?
So MySQL, again, it typically uses that single master node for writes.
Right.
So if you need to make a change to the database schema, like adding a new column to a table, it often requires locking that master node.
Which means?
Which means that basically everything stops. All the write operations have to wait.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So even a small change can lead to downtime.
For the entire game.
Yeah, which is not ideal.
That's a nightmare.
With TiDB, those schema changes happen online.
Right.
So the database stays up and running.
That makes so much more sense.
Yeah, it's much smoother.
Okay, so it seems pretty clear that TiDB has some big advantages over MySQL.
Especially for games, yeah.
But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about, like, practicality. How is TiDB actually deployed and supported? Is this something that only, like, the big game studios with huge IT teams can handle?
Not at all. That's one of the great things about TiDB. They've made it really accessible to a wide range of users.
Oh, okay.
And one of the ways they've done that is through TiDB Cloud, which offers a couple of different options.
Okay, so it's like choosing your character class at the start of a game.
I like that.
Different options for different play styles.
Yeah, so for larger companies or applications that need like that really high performance and strong security, there's TiDB Cloud dedicated, and this gives you a dedicated environment with guaranteed resources. And it's fully managed by PingCap, which is the company behind TiDB.
So it's like having a team of experts handling all the technical stuff for you.
Exactly. They take care of the infrastructure, the backup, security, maintenance, all of that.
Okay, so developers can just focus on, building the game.
Exactly, yeah.
That's awesome. But what about smaller teams then? Or people who are just starting out?
So for them, there's TiDB Cloud Serverless.
Okay.
This is like the easy mode of database deployment.
Nice.
You don't have to worry about servers or clusters or any of that.
You just create your database and go.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it scales automatically based on your usage. So you only pay for what you need.
That's great, especially for like indie developers who might be wearing a lot of hats and don't have time to manage all that stuff.
And the best part is TiDB Cloud Serverless uses the same core technology as the self-managed version of TiDB.
Oh, okay.
So you're getting the same power and performance.
So no matter what size your team is, there's a TiDB deployment option for you.
Yeah, that's the goal.
That's really cool. But what about support then? Because even with the best technology, things can go wrong.
Of course. Yeah.
And when they do, you need help.
Absolutely. And PingCap has a really great support system. They have online documentation, community forums, and even dedicated support engineers who are available 24/7.
Okay, so if you run into any problems, you can get help.
Yeah, you're not alone.
That's a good feeling.
Yeah.
So let's say someone is listening to this and they're like, wow, TiDB sounds really cool. What are some good resources for learning more about it?
Fortunately, TiDB has a ton of resources for people who want to learn.
Okay.
Have great online documentation, tutorials, and even these interactive sandboxes where you can try out TiDB without having to install anything.
Oh, cool. So you can kind of test drive it before you commit?
Exactly.
That's great.
And for those who are really serious, they also offer a variety of certifications.
Oh, certifications. Okay.
Yeah, for different roles, like developers,
Yeah.
administrators, architects.
That's really cool. So if someone wants to get started quickly and just kind of experiment with TiDB, what would you recommend?
I would say start with TiDB Cloud Serverless.
Okay.
It's super user-friendly.
Yeah, we talked about that.
You can spin up a cluster in minutes.
Yeah.
And there are no upfront costs.
Yeah. Nice. So it's a risk-free way to just try it out.
Exactly.
And if they get stuck, There's always the community forum.
Right. There's a great community of people who are willing to help.
Awesome. Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We've explored what TiDB is, how it's being used in gaming, how it compares to other databases like MySQL, and even how to get started with it. But before we wrap things up, I want to bring it back to you, the listener. Why should you care about TiDB, even if you're not a game developer?
Yeah.
Or a database expert?
That's a great question. And I think it's important to remember that technologies like TiDB are really just tools.
Okay.
What matters is how those tools are used and the impact they have. Think about the games you play. The reason they're so immersive and engaging is often because of the powerful databases working behind the scenes.
So it's like the foundation of a house.
Exactly.
I might not see it, but it's essential.
And as games become even more complex and data-driven, the database becomes even more important.
So even if you're not a programmer, understanding these trends can give you a better appreciation for, the games you play.
Definitely. And it goes beyond gaming, too. These trends are important for so many other industries, like finance, e-commerce, social media, healthcare. They all rely on databases.
So TiDB in gaming is just...
Yeah, it's just one example.
One example of this bigger trend.
So
it's data becoming more and more important.
And as that happens, understanding how these technologies work is going to become increasingly important for everyone.
Right, not just for the tech people.
Yeah, for everyone.
This has been a really fascinating look at TiDB.
It has.
We've learned a lot.
We have.
So any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I would just say, don't underestimate the power of data and the technologies that manage it. We live in a data-driven world, and understanding these trends is key to navigating that world.
I agree completely. So we encourage everyone to check out TiDB's website, explore their resources, maybe even try out their serverless platform.
It's a great way to learn.
Yeah. And who knows, you might discover a passion for databases that you never knew you had.
Never know.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of TiDB. We've been talking a lot about TiDB and how it's changing things, especially for games. But I kind of want to zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture here.
I like that. Sometimes it's good to step back and see how these technologies, fit into the larger scheme of things.
Exactly. So for our listeners who might not be like game developers or, hardcore tech people, why should they care about TiDB?
Well, I think it's important to remember that technologies like this are really just tools, right?
Okay.
What matters is how those tools are used and the impact they have on, our lives, our experiences.
So it's not just about the tech itself, but about what it allows us to do.
Exactly, yeah. Think about the games you enjoy playing. The reason those games are so immersive and engaging and constantly evolving is often because of the databases that are working behind the scenes.
That's a good point.
Databases like TiDB are really the engines that drive those experiences. They handle massive amounts of data. They process transactions seamlessly, and they make sure everything runs smoothly. Even when you have millions of players.
Yeah.
All interacting at the same time.
So it's kind of like the foundation of a house. You might not see it, but it's essential for everything else to work.
Exactly.
I like that.
And as games get even more complex and rely more and more on data, the role of the database becomes even more critical.
Right.
And TiDB, with its ability to, scale so easily, handle real-time data, and adapt to all these changing needs, it's really at the forefront of this evolution in gaming.
So even if you're not a programmer or a database expert, just understanding these trends can give you a deeper appreciation for how those games are made.
Absolutely. And this goes way beyond gaming, too. I mean, think about things like financial transactions, e-commerce platforms, social networks, healthcare. All of these things rely on really strong, scalable databases.
So what we're seeing with TiDB in gaming is just a small part of...
It's a glimpse into the future.
This much bigger trend of data becoming more and more important.
Exactly, yeah. And as that happens, understanding how these technologies work is going to be important for everyone.
Right, not just the tech people.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, this has been a super interesting deep dive into the world of TiDB.
It has, yeah.
Any final thoughts for our listeners?
I would just say this. Don't underestimate the power of data in the technologies that manage it. We live in a data-driven world. And understanding these trends is really important for navigating this world.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So everyone, go check out TiDB's website. explore their resources, maybe even play around with their serverless platform.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And you never know. You might just discover a passion for databases that you never knew you had.
You never know.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone, for this deep dive into the world of TiDB. We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration of the cutting edge of technology